Before we dive in, if you're drawn to stories the world tries to forget, hit subscribe, like, and comment. This one will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Los Angeles was still awake when the gunshots tore through the cold November air. Northridge, a neighborhood known for its quiet blocks and late-night taco stands, suddenly felt like a war zone. It was just past 1:25 a.m. when the 911 calls came in, frantic, breathless, overlapping. Someone's shooting, a car, people are hurt, please hurry. By the time the first patrol unit arrived, only the echoes of the attack remained. The streetlights flickered against the metallic shell casing scattered across the asphalt, glinting like the last traces of a nightmare. A black sedan sat at a crooked angle near the curb, engine still running, headlights spilling into the darkness. Inside, officers found 3 victims, 2 barely clinging to life, and 1 whose pulse was fading fast. Her name was Maria DELAROSA, but most knew her by her rising stage name, DELAROSA, the 22-year-old singer with a voice people said felt like it remembered all your secrets. She'd been gaining traction fast, small clubs, growing fan bases, a viral single that hinted at a future big enough to terrify the competition. And now, here she was, bleeding out in the backseat of a car that looked like it had been hunted. Detectives Lopez and Arnett were among the first to arrive. They exchanged a look that needed no words. This wasn't random, this was execution style, ambush, planned, coordinated. But planned by who? Why her? Paramedics rushed to stabilize the survivors. The 2 men in the front seat were critically wounded, slipping in and out of consciousness. One of them, barely audible, whispered, "They waited for us." But when asked who they were, his eyes glazed over, and the line between pain and silence swallowed the answer whole. As yellow tape rose across the street and neighbors watched from behind curtains, the detectives began piecing together the fragments. Camera poles, doorbell cams, tire marks. But the killers had vanished before anyone could even step outside. Then came the first twist. A woman in a bathrobe waved down police, trembling as she clutched her phone. I heard everything," she said. "I looked through the window. It was 2 men. They walked up to the car like they already knew who was inside." "How could she tell?" Detective Lopez pressed. "They weren't just shooting," the woman said. "They were searching, like they needed to make sure she was there." It didn't make sense. DELAROSA had no known enemies, no criminal connections, nothing that would justify a targeted hit. But the deeper the detectives looked, the stranger things became. In the back seat, near where Maria had been found, investigators recovered a small folded note, one that didn't belong to her, the survivors, or the car. Just 5 words, written in hurried pen strokes. "You shouldn't have chosen them." Detective Arnett froze. What the hell does that mean? Lopez stared at the note, realizing they had just stumbled into something far bigger than an ambush. Something personal, something planned, and something that, if they weren't careful, might strike again. Because whoever had written that note wasn't finished. Detective Lopez stared at the note as if it were a live wire. 5 words, simple and poisonous. You shouldn't have chosen them. It wasn't a threat, it was a judgment, a message meant for someone who had crossed an invisible line. By sunrise, the case had already spread across every division in the Valley Bureau. The media didn't know the details yet, but they sensed something was wrong. A rising young singer, dead in the middle of a quiet Los Angeles street? That alone was enough to ignite a firestorm. But the detectives knew what the public didn't. This wasn't a robbery or a late-night dispute. This was a surgical strike. Hours later, Lopez and Arnett met with DELAROSA's manager, a man named Victor Serrano. He looked composed, too composed. Not grief, not shock, just a controlled exhale as he slid into the interrogation room chair.
"When was the last time you saw Maria?" Lopez asked. Victor laced his fingers. "Yesterday. We had a studio meeting. She was excited. She said she was about to make the biggest decision of her career." "What kind of decision?" Arnett asked. Victor hesitated. "She didn't say, just that it involved switching teams." Lopez exchanged a glance with her partner. "Teams? You mean labels?" Victor nodded slowly. "Look, Maria was talented, really talented, and talent attracts attention, good and bad. There were people who wanted her, people who felt entitled to her." "Which people?" Arnett pressed. Victor sighed. "The kind who don't like hearing the word no." The detectives leaned in, sensing the truth was finally grazable. But Victor suddenly shut down, as if he realized he had said too much. "There's no proof any of this is connected to what happened last night. You're reaching." But Lopez saw something in his eyes. Fear. After he left, Arnett opened Maria's social media messages, specifically the unread folder. And there it was. Dozens of messages from a name that kept repeating. Anonymous accounts. No profile picture, no history. Each message more aggressive than the last. You're wasting your loyalty. They don't deserve you. I'll fix this one way or another. You'll see who really protects you. The last message was sent 4 hours before the shooting. Lopez leaned back in her chair. This wasn't a fan. This was someone with access, someone who knew her moves. Meanwhile, the 2 surviving victims had been stabilized at the hospital. But before detectives could reach them, the LAPD received an urgent call. The survivor, who had spoken the night before, the one who said, "They're waiting for us," had disappeared from his hospital room. Not discharged, not transferred, disappeared. Security footage revealed the impossible. He walked out of the hospital under his own power, despite barely being conscious hours earlier. No limp, no hesitation. He walked with purpose, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing, like someone who wasn't a victim. Arnett's voice cracked the silence. "We thought he was running from danger." Lopez shook her head as she watched the footage. "No," she whispered. "He's running back to it." And that's when the phone on the table buzzed violently. A text from an unknown number. "Stop looking. She made her choice." Attached was a picture. A picture of DELAROSA, taken the night she died. Taken just minutes before the ambush.
The photo attached to the anonymous text froze the entire investigation. Maria stood beneath a dim street lamp, her hood pulled over her head, expression tense, like she knew someone was watching her. Maybe she sensed danger creeping closer. Maybe she already knew what was coming. But one thing stood out. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows, was the silhouette of a man, tall, still, staring directly into the camera. And he wasn't one of the shooters caught on the neighbor's doorbell footage. There was someone else out there, someone who got close enough to photograph her, but never stepped in to help. Detective Lopez zoomed in on the image, enhancing the grainy reflection in a nearby car window. It showed the same man walking toward Maria minutes before she climbed into the black sedan. He wasn't shooting at her, he was following her. By the time they traced the number that sent the text, it had already been destroyed, but the night shift technician found a break. The phone had pinged a tower near an abandoned recording studio in Van Nuys, a place Maria used to rehearse before her career took off. The same place she had written her first demo. The same place she stopped going to after telling friends someone kept hanging around there at night. Lopez and Arnett headed to the location just after 11 p.m., the kind of hour where the valley feels like it's holding its breath. The studio door was unlocked, dust swirled in their flashlight beams, and faint footprints dragged across the concrete floor. They followed the trail to a back room, a sound booth long stripped of equipment, where a single USB flash drive sat in the center of the floor. Arnett swallowed hard. We're being led here. Someone wants us here. Lopez plugged the USB into her portable reader. One file, one video. Maria's voice filled the silent room, trembling, recorded less than 24 hours before she was killed. "I don't know who else to tell. They said they'd ruin everything if I left. They said I belonged to them. But I can't stay in that contract. I can't pretend anymore." Her breathing quickened. "Someone followed me home last night. I think it's him. The one who said he'd take care of me if I just stayed loyal. I thought he was joking. I thought people like him only exist in stories." Then she whispered, "If anything happens to me, it wasn't random." The video ended. Silence filled the booth like smoke. Arnett stared at the blank screen. So she tried to leave. She tried to walk away. And they punished her. Before Lopez could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. A text. "You're late." Then a second message. "Look outside." The detectives rushed toward the studio entrance, hands on their weapons, adrenaline spiking, but the street was empty. the darkness stretching in every direction. Then Lopez noticed something. A car parked across the street, engine still warm. A black sedan, the same model Maria had died in. Arnett moved toward it cautiously, sweeping the area. Lopez checked the interior. Empty, except for one thing. A note taped to the steering wheel. The same handwriting as before. This wasn't about loyalty. It was about control. And on the back, a final line that made Lopez's blood run cold. She wasn't the only one who tried to leave. 2 weeks later, another body was found in a parking lot downtown. Same execution style, same shell casings, same signature. And still, no suspects, no arrest, just a pattern, a warning, a whisper spreading through the music world. Someone out there decides who gets to rise and who never leaves at all. If this story hits you hard, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe so you don't miss it.